The ICC have in recent times made a few changes to the rules or future rules that could impact the game, and you remember we'd done one video on the introduction of a time clock to ensure that time isn't wasted in between overs. But another rather more interesting rule that came about from what feels like absolutely nowhere was a blanket ban on transgender players turning up in international cricket. Now, there is plenty of logical reasoning as to why exactly this is the case and why it is that the ICC have made this move, and we'll discuss all of those, including looking at what exactly it is that the ICC have said in this regard. So we'll get into it, but the fact is cricket and other sports in general could also perhaps do more to ensure that sport becomes a little bit more inclusive, even if that means banning trans players from turning up for teams that are sporting biological women. What exactly can that be done? Well, we don't quite know yet, but first let's delve a little deeper into the issue and figure out why it is that the ICC have done what they've done, starting with what it is that the ICC themselves said. ICC said that their ban is based on the following principles: protection of the integrity of the women's game, safety, fairness, and inclusion. The regulations will be reviewed within 2 years. That last statement is very interesting because it shows that this remains, despite whatever else is being said, a fluid matter. If the regulations are set to be reviewed, it means that in many ways the scientific studies which are there might be for future breakthroughs which say that it is quite okay to have a trans player in a women's team, due to one very simple reason, that there won't be any biological advantages that are available to the player. Yet it is worth noting that the current studies out there don't make a compelling case for a biologically male player who's undergone sex change surgeries and the various procedures that need to be done playing. The reason for that being is that anyone who has undergone male puberty will continue to have those ingrained physical advantages even if they undergo a sex change surgery. So it's a complicated matter for sure, but the science that we have right now is pretty much in favor of what it is that the ICC have done. And not just this, by the way, was a small part of a release, but there's also the simple matter that ICC CEO Jeff Allardyce himself also spoke out on the matter. He said that inclusivity is incredibly important to us as a sport, but our priority was to protect the integrity of the international women's game and the safety of players. Now, he's prefixing that part by saying that, look, inclusivity is important, and this is where really the debate comes down to, is that it's a matter of inclusivity versus the concept of, gender as, let's say, in a scientific sense. And that's where things become a little bit complicated, because as I said, what Allardyce is saying here does kind of back the science and should in no way be misconstrued as being something that is anti-trans or anything of the sort. It's just that in the sporting field, such advantages do really make a big difference. So it might be something that a lot of teams might end up gaining an unfair competitive advantage out of. But there's another side of things to be considered, and that is, of course, the inclusivity side of the debate, which does also prop up when it comes to not just a sport like cricket, but even many Olympic sports. In fact, the International Olympic Association has pretty much put a ban on trans athletes, which is why, by the way, the ICC have suddenly taken such a major step. Don't forget, cricket is going to be part of the Olympics come 2028, and the ICC are trying to regulate their sport in line with the International Olympic regulations. So the Olympics currently have a blanket ban on transgender participation, which means it cannot happen. So cricket have gone the same way. That, by the way, is the main reason it's happened, because cricket has in the past seen representation in terms of the trans community from this lady right here, Danielle McGahey. Unfortunately, McGahey, who is, it is worth noting, the first ever transgender player to have turned up in the sport of cricket internationally, that is, has now retired from the sport as far as the international game is concerned. The reasoning for it is simple: she won't be allowed to represent her country anymore. She's an Australian, but it turned out for Canada based on regulations, because it was allowed for her. But now she will no longer be taking part in the international sport, because quite frankly it is not allowed according to the rules. So she's duly retired from the game, which then brings you to the second part of the debate. Can cricket be more inclusive? Can sport in general be more inclusive? Again, there is a valid reason to say that maybe you should kind of be starting leagues or promoting sport wherein trans athletes are allowed to take part and compete against each other. That might end up solving the situation to a huge degree, because again, then you'd see people who identify as females and who've then undergone the required sex changing procedures taking part against one another, and that would be a great way to boost the inclusivity and the let's say visibility of trans people as a whole. But again, it is not viable in today's day and age, but it does also show you that it's a pretty multifaceted issue, because someone's livelihood just gets impacted like that. It's well and good to make a blanket call, but it is a blanket call that could be having a massive impact, and therefore, along with making that blanket call, which again, as I say, scientifically is supported, maybe the sport as a whole needs to be looking towards being a little more inclusive. And this is not just a cricketing issue, by the way. I'd say it's for sports everywhere, because again, 99% of the sports do come under Olympic sports, and most of them will be following the same guidelines, because again, the Olympics follow this exact same guidelines. But what are your thoughts on the entire matter? Do you think that sports should be working towards more inclusivity? How do you think they should go about with it? You can let us know that in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, tap that bell icon, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Don't forget to download the AajTak app, and if you're already on the channel, go right ahead, check out some other videos we've done. For now though, from my side, it is goodbye.